Ready, set, up. One.
Ready, two. All right. So, would you like to introduce yourself to our students?
Okay, my name is Bill Crowley. Most people call me Billy, and I've been a member of Good Shepherd for about 14 years.
Awesome. And we are talking today because in November we have Veterans Day. And for this month's Olympic Day, we're focusing on gratitude, and we wanted to tie veterans in with our gratitude. So, to start, can you tell me about your military experience and if you were drafted, how you found out you were drafted?
Sure. I graduated from college in January of 1970, and in spring I got a letter from the draft board. There was a lottery a year before, and my number was 50 in the lottery. And so I got the letter saying I would be reporting to my draft board in November of 1970. And I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for my basic, and I went to AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training, to Fort Knox. And after I graduated there, I was in personnel for, that was my, what they call MSOE. From there I went to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indianapolis and became a finance specialist.
All right. And so, what branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Army.
Army. And what was your official position and rank?
When I went into Vietnam, I was a private. When I came out of the service, I was a Spec 5, which is equivalent to a sergeant. The other thing was, had I stayed in the original training when I was at Fort Knox, I received a letter saying I was going to take someone else's job in Turkey. And instead, because I went into more advanced training and went into finance, I went to Vietnam instead of Turkey. So I spent my tour in Vietnam.
And how long was your tour in Vietnam?
I ended up being in Vietnam for 9.5 months because they were giving early outs instead of the year. And so therefore I got out of the service in March of 1972.
And where did you serve overseas in Vietnam?
It was called Phu Khai, and which was in the southern part, more towards the center of the of Vietnam. They flew us into this compound, and we shared a compound. The finance company, I was in 13th Finance, and we shared that with an engineering unit. And so basically my job there was to make certain that people who were coming into Vietnam and being assigned to different areas, or if they were being reassigned, that I made certain that their pay was properly changed so that their family at home either got their pay or they got their pay at the proper company they were now assigned with.
Okay. Do you want to describe like just a typical day while you were deployed over in Vietnam?
Well, we had an office, and there were 8 of us in the office, and we had a sergeant that was in charge of us. And the people coming into Vietnam, we shared a building with personnel and finance. So they would go to the personnel first, and then they would be assigned to a unit, and then they would come to us, and we would change all the paperwork that needed to be changed. And that basically was our daily routine, except once a month when it was payday, we had to be responsible for watching the officers, the pay officers, count the money that they would take to their unit and make certain that everything was fine that way. Outside of that, our other duties were, we had to pull guard duty of the compound at least every other week. So, and which was, you sat in a guard tower and you watched the perimeter of the compound, because we were across the street from some Vietnamese village. And sometimes the North Vietnamese would come into their village, and we could watch them come in and see their guns and weapons and everything else. And one night while I was in the guard tower, they fired at us, but we could not fire back. We were in what was called a no-fire zone. So all we had to do was report it to our officer of the day, and he sent some people out to look at the house, and by the time they got there, North Vietnamese were gone. Yeah.
Wow. So 9.5 months of kind of a lot of probably emotion. That when
Right.
you got to find out that you were going to go home, what were some of your feelings and thoughts at that point?
Oh, well, I was glad I was going home. You know, it was quite different. When I did get home, I was not accepted. And that was an era where the people who did serve in Vietnam were not accepted. When I was leaving, I came to San Francisco that's where I was let go from the service. And as I was walking out of the camp there, or the fort, the base, I was spit on, and people were lined up, even though I had civilian clothes on. So, you know, there was nothing you could do. They saw you carrying your backpack, which was military.
Yeah, so not the welcoming home at all.
Not the welcoming home at all.
So with that, you know, your coming home was not at all anything like being, you know, celebrated for your service or grateful for your fighting for our freedom. So now there's a program called an honor flight, which got started because so many veterans like yourself from Vietnam, the Korean War, or World War II, they have these beautiful monuments built in your honor for everything you guys have done for our country, and sacrificed so many things, and some people the ultimate price with their life. But there was actually a doctor who found out that a lot of veterans, while these monuments were for them, they had never had the means or the ability to go visit them. So that's how the honor flight got started, with one guy just seeing that the people that these monuments were for were not able to travel to go see them. And so this flight called the honor flight allows veterans to go and spend a day in Washington, D.C. and see all the monuments and the meaning it has for them as they were built with such careful detail for people like you. So can you describe your experience on your honor flight?
It was very emotional. I had been to Washington 2 years before I went on the honor flight, so I had seen the monuments, but it was quite different going on the flight. You get there at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and the people for Stars and Stripes honor flight, the volunteers, are just outstanding. You are treated like royalty. My son was my guardian, and he hadn't been to Washington, so I was able to explain some of the things that we were seeing. I saw the Korean monument at night on my first trip, and it was really an experience. It was different seeing it in the daylight with the honor flight. We got to see the Vietnam Wall, we saw the Korean monument, and we spent time at the World War II monument. And from there, they took us to see the Pentagon, and where they have a memorial also for the people that died at the Pentagon. And it was very, you just kept moving all the time. And you were given a certain amount of time that you could spend at each monument. And it really was a moving day to see that, and to spend time with other veterans and talk to them and everything else. and learn about their experiences.
So, is there one monument that kind of stands out for you that really like resonated with you?
Well, of course, the Vietnam War wall, because of the fact that I was in Vietnam. But like I said, the Korean monument, it's just so real. And, you know, I mean, I know some veterans that were in Korea, and when they describe the winter there and everything else, and you see this, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. So when you were on your honor flight, you get to spend a whole day in Washington, D.C., and then on your way home on the flight, there's something called the mail call. Can you explain for our students what the mail call is?
Well, when you were in the service, you had mail call. And those were usually letters from your family or something. You know, if you had a wife, your wife, friends, some friends. And so we were on the plane, and then they would call each name individually, and they handed you a packet. And in the packet were letters that my family put together. But there were also letters from students from different schools, and they were really, really neat. They were both, you didn't realize how these students, and they were second graders, fourth graders, eighth graders, how much they really appreciated the fact that you were a veteran, and gave them the freedoms they have today. And some of them were very, very blessed. They had verses in there from the Bible, and that was really neat that they took the time to put a verse from the Bible in their letter to you.
That's awesome. And so when you guys get these mails called, it's obviously very emotional. And then when you guys arrive back at the airport, your arrival from the honor flight is almost the exact opposite of what was the arrival when you came back and you were walking out. So can you explain, you explained already that like when you departed from your military base from Vietnam, how people did not react well, they were not grateful. Explain to me what happened at the airport and how you were greeted back as you landed.
When you got off the plane, there was a bagpipe unit that played the bagpipes, and you walked through an aisle in which every service was represented, plus also there were Boy Scouts, and they saluted you as you walked out. And then when you got to the terminal, there were the American Legion riders, and everybody shook your hand, and then it was the families of all the people and friends. And what was amazing was the number of young children that were there besides adults. And just, even though they didn't know you, they were looking for maybe their grandpa or their uncle or brother, sister, whatever it was, whoever was coming off the flight. They were trying to shake your hand just as much as they were trying to shake the other ones.
That's awesome. That's an amazing experience. So when we talk about this for Good Shepherd, our students have the opportunity now to be a part of that mail call and make those cards. And so now they'll know the impact it really has on people, especially veterans that did not get to be thanked or feel that. But when I think about the opportunity for our students and that we are so blessed to share God's word, what do you think that impact will have as some of these veterans are sitting there reading verses in God's word during that, you know, that very emotional time?
I think they will appreciate it. And again, it depends upon, you know, like some of the veterans had stacks from their family because they come from large families. I don't come from a large family. So I appreciated having letters from these students because of the fact that, you know, my family did give me letters, but again, if you don't have a big family, or say you lost your wife, if you were a World War II veteran, or even a Korean veteran, Vietnam veteran, and that it gave you some closing, and it really helped, you know, that people think of you and were willing to take the time to write the letter.
That's awesome, thank you. Well, thank you for giving us time today and certainly educating our students on what it means to serve and what it means to be grateful and thankful, and how impactful it is to share our faith, even with strangers that we don't know, but how important it is to stop and recognize everybody for things they've done for us, and especially this month, thanking our veterans for what they did for us, whether we know them or not, whether we know what they did or not, being grateful for the freedoms we're given. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you.